Have you ever considered that some evils aren't confined to abandoned buildings or ancient rituals, but can attach themselves to families, to the very fabric of the land, growing in malevolence with each passing day? What if the unseen forces that torment us aren't fleeting shadows, but vengeful entities with a singular, terrifying purpose? This is the chilling truth behind the Bell Witch. In the nascent years of the 19th century, deep within the fertile valleys of Tennessee, John Bell was a man of prosperity and standing. A respected farmer, he had carved out a comfortable life for his family, his wife, Lucy, and their many children, including his beloved daughter, Betsy. Their homestead, nestled amidst rolling fields and dense forests, was a testament to their hard work and a picture of idyllic rural life. But beneath this veneer of peace, an insidious darkness began to stir, a malevolent presence that would etch itself into the annals of American folklore, becoming known as America's most well-documented haunting. It began subtly in the autumn of 1817. Unexplained rapping noises echoed through the Bell Farmhouse walls. Soft at first, like knuckles on wood, then growing louder, more insistent, resembling a distant drum. The family dismissed it as wild animals or curious neighbors. But then came the scratching, as if a creature with razor claws was tearing at the very foundation of their home. Objects would fall from shelves with no apparent cause, blankets would be torn from sleeping children, and strange, unidentifiable sounds like gulping or chewing would emanate from empty rooms. Fear, a cold, unwelcome guest, began to settle in the Bell household. John Bell, a man of logic and practicality, inspected every inch of his property, yet found nothing. As the winter drew in, the phenomena escalated. The invisible presence gained a voice. Faint at first, a barely audible whisper, then growing stronger, clearer, often mimicking the voices of family members or visitors, mocking them with cruel precision. This unseen entity, which soon identified itself as Kate or the Bell Witch, focused its torment with chilling specificity. John Bell endured physical assaults. Unseen hands would slap him, pull his hair, and even pinch him, leaving welts and bruises. His daughter Betsy suffered the worst, subjected to constant hair-pulling, invisible slaps and pinches that left her screaming in agony. The Bell Witch would yank her hair, prick her with pins, and even strike her in the face, sometimes knocking out her teeth. She became withdrawn, terrified, often found convulsing on the floor. The torment became a public spectacle. Neighbors, friends, even prominent figures like General Andrew Jackson traveled to the Bell homestead to witness the bizarre occurrences. Jackson himself after encountering the witch's power firsthand, his carriage reportedly stalled mysteriously on the approach to the farm, and he claimed to hear disembodied voices, declared he'd rather fight the British than face the Bell Witch. The spirit, cunning and malicious, conversed with visitors, answered questions, even sang hymns, all while continuing its relentless persecution of the Bell family, particularly John. Its stated goal became terrifyingly clear: to kill John Bell. The climax of the Bell Witch's reign of terror arrived in the early morning of December 20th, 1820. John Bell had been ailing for months, his health steadily declining under the relentless psychological and physical attacks of the entity. That morning, he was found in a deep coma, unresponsive. His family noticed a mysterious vial of dark liquid near his bed. When a doctor arrived, he administered a spoonful of the liquid to a cat, which immediately died, convulsing violently. Shortly after, John Bell passed away. It was widely believed, even by those who had been skeptical, that the Bell Witch had fulfilled her deadly promise. As his body was being prepared for burial, the witch's voice filled the house, singing a loud, triumphant song, then proclaiming, "I have killed John Bell." After John Bell's death, the family dispersed. Betsy Bell, forever scarred by the ordeal, broke off her engagement, never fully recovering from the torments she endured. The haunting seemed to subside, but Kate made a chilling promise before she departed. She would return in 7 years, and indeed in 1828, the voices and disturbances briefly resurfaced, though with less intensity, targeting John Bell Jr. before fading once more. Yet, the legacy of the Bell Witch never died. The cave on the old Bell property, where many of the phenomena were centered, became a site of enduring mystery and occasional unverified reports of strange occurrences. Locals still whisper stories of cold spots, disembodied voices, and the oppressive feeling of being watched. So, if you ever find yourself traversing the quiet, ancient lands of Robertson County, Tennessee, if you feel an inexplicable chill in the air, or hear a faint, almost imperceptible whisper on the wind, like secrets shared among the trees, remember the bells, and pray that the silence holds, that the shadows remain still. Because in those old fields where a dark entity once fulfilled a deadly vow, some believe the Bell Witch never truly left. She simply waits and listens. But the whispers, like threads of spider silk in a dark attic, never truly vanished. They simply wove themselves into the fabric of the county, a chilling undercurrent beneath the mundane. Generations passed, and the old Bell homestead crumbled further into the earth, reclaimed by the tenacious kudzu and the indifferent forest. Yet the legends persisted, passed down in hushed tones around campfires and through family histories. The Bell Witch, a name synonymous with dread, became a cautionary tale, a spectral boogeyman invoked to keep children from straying too far into the woods, or to explain away an inexplicable run of bad luck. However, the late 20th and early 21st centuries brought a new kind of curiosity, the insatiable hunger for the paranormal. Ghost hunters, amateur historians, and thrill-seekers descended upon Robertson County, drawn by the siren call of America's Most Haunted. They explored the Bell Witch Cave, armed with modern equipment, EMF meters, thermal cameras, voice recorders, hoping to capture a glimpse, a sound, a single irrefutable piece of evidence. Most left disappointed, attributing strange readings to faulty equipment or overactive imaginations. But some experience things that defy rational explanation. There are accounts, dismissed by many as mere anecdote, of devices malfunctioning violently within the cave, their batteries draining. Instantly, visitors reporting sudden, overwhelming feelings of dread, nausea, or intense cold, even on a summer's day. And the voices. Not the clear, taunting voice of Kate that tormented the Bells, but faint, distorted whispers, seemingly just at the edge of hearing, often repeating phrases like "get out" or "mine." Sometimes a chilling, guttural growl would emanate from the deeper recesses of the cavern, a sound that drove even the most seasoned investigators retreating in terror. One such account comes from a young couple, fervent paranormal enthusiasts, who ventured into the cave in the summer of 2007. They were recording everything, narrating their experience for their online channel. Deep inside, in a narrow, damp passage, their camera suddenly went dark. Frantically, the young man tried to restart it, but it was dead. Then from the absolute darkness around them, they heard a chorus of children's voices, not whispering, but singing. A high-pitched, discordant lullaby that seemed to emanate from all directions at once, pressing in on them, threatening to crush them. The girl, paralyzed with terror, could only manage a choked sob. As the singing reached a crescendo, she felt invisible hands begin to pull at her hair, sharp pinpricks pricking her skin, mirroring the torments of Betsy Bell. Nearly 2 centuries prior, they fled the cave in a blind panic, emerging into the daylight gasping for breath, their clothes torn, their skin covered in fresh, unexplained scratches and bruises. They never posted their footage. The experience had broken something within them. The old Bell property, including the cave, is now privately owned, with strict warnings against trespassing. Yet the legend persists. evolving with each generation. Some locals claim that Kate isn't merely bound to the cave or the original homestead, but to the bloodline itself, a generational curse that subtly affects the descendants of the Bell. A family, even those unaware of their lineage. Others believe her malicious spirit, having fulfilled its original purpose, now merely seeks to spread fear, to remind the living that some entities once roused can never truly be vanquished. The field where John Bell's farmhouse once stood, now just an empty expanse of green, is said to be eerily silent, devoid of the usual sounds of nature, as if holding its breath. So, as you drive through the scenic byways of Tennessee, past the quaint towns and the sprawling farmlands, remember that beneath the surface of the ordinary, ancient evils can lie, dormant. They wait for a crack, a moment of curiosity, a reckless venture into forbidden places. And if you ever feel an inexplicable chill, a whisper in the wind that sounds almost like a name, or the faint, haunting echo of a triumphant song on a cold December morning, you'll know that the Bell Witch, America's most well-documented haunting, is not merely a story. She is a presence. She is waiting, and she is always listening. The true insidious nature of Kate, however, lies not just in her ability to terrorize, but in her subtle, almost imperceptible ability to manipulate the minds of those who dare to delve too deeply into her story. Dr. Evelyn Reed, a meticulous academic specializing in folklore and paranormal phenomena, found herself ensnared in this very web. Initially dismissive of the sensationalism surrounding the Bell Witch, Evelyn approached her research with rigorous academic skepticism, poring over historical documents, eyewitness accounts, and local legends. She believed the phenomenon could be explained by mass hysteria, psychological suggestion, or even environmental factors. Her obsession began innocently enough. Late nights spent in archives, poring over fragile, yellowed papers detailing the Bell family's torment. She became intimately familiar with every detail, every alleged whisper, every cruel act attributed to Kate. Soon, her dreams began to change. They weren't vivid nightmares, but subtle distortions of her daily life. Familiar objects in her apartment subtly rearranged, faint tapping sounds coming from her walls that would vanish upon investigation, the distant echo of a child's laughter when no children were near. She dismissed them as the byproduct of her exhaustive research, a mind too steeped in morbid history. But the phenomena escalated beyond the realm of dreams. One evening, while transcribing a particularly disturbing passage about Betsy Bell's torments, Evelyn's laptop screen flickered erratically, then displayed a single, crudely drawn image, a smiling stick-figure face with one eye missing. Her heart leaped. It was reminiscent of the descriptions of the antique doll from the Whispering Pines sanatorium, a detail she had once dismissed as a fictional embellishment. A cold dread seeped into her bones. Then her recording device, dormant on her desk, suddenly activated. A low, guttural growl filled her quiet study, followed by a series of rapid, almost frantic whispers, too distorted to understand. But one word, clear as a bell, pierced through the cacophony. Mine. Evelyn, shaken but stubbornly rational, tried to find a logical explanation. A power surge. A faulty device. But the next day, strange, red welts appeared on her arm, as if she had been pinched repeatedly. The very same marks that plagued Betsy. Bell. Sleep became a luxury she could no longer afford. Every shadow seemed to hold a form, every creak of her old house a deliberate movement. The Bell Witch, it seemed, was no longer confined to the fields of Tennessee or the dusty pages of history. She had found a new target, a new mind to pry, open and filled with dread. Evelyn knew she had to stop. She shredded her research notes, deleted the digital files, and booked a flight to a remote, sun-drenched island, desperate to escape the encroaching darkness. Yet as she boarded the plane, settling into her seat, a chillingly familiar melody began to play on the plane's intercom system. Not the typical boarding music, but a high-pitched, discordant rendition of an old hymn, the very same hymn the Bell Witch was said to have sung during John Bell's funeral. Evelyn's blood ran cold. She looked around, her eyes wide with terror, but no one else seemed to notice. The other passengers chatted idly, oblivious to the spectral serenade. As the plane took off, leaving the familiar world behind, Evelyn pressed her face against the window, watching the lights of the city shrink below, and then, faintly, undeniably, she heard it. A single, triumphant, cackling laugh, not from the intercom, but from the empty seat beside her, echoing the very laughter that had proclaimed John Bell's death. The Bell Witch had not been left behind. She had simply found a new vessel for her journey, a new way to ensure her legend and her torment would continue. So the next time you hear a tale of a haunting or delve into the chilling details of a well-documented case, remember Evelyn. Remember that curiosity can be a dangerous thing. For some evils, like the Bell Witch, are not content to remain in the past. They are always listening. They are always waiting. And perhaps they are already closer than you think, a mere whisper away from becoming your own chilling truth. Years passed, and the curious case of Dr. Evelyn Reed became another footnote in the ever-expanding narrative of the Bell Witch. Officially, she was declared missing, presumed lost at sea during a freak storm. Her academic colleagues, while saddened, eventually moved on. Her unconventional research quietly filed away. But those who had known her, who had seen the subtle shifts in her demeanor, the haunted look in her eyes before her disappearance, whispered among themselves. They spoke of the strange, unseasonal fog that had cloaked the airport on the day of her flight, and the chilling report of an isolated plane, its transponder inexplicably offline, briefly broadcasting an old hymn over an empty frequency before vanishing from radar. The Bell Witch, it seemed, had mastered a new form of torment. Not just physical assault or psychological manipulation, but total erasure. She didn't just haunt homes, she claimed lives, leaving no trace, no body, only the chilling echo of her triumph. The stories continued, but now with a new, darker undertone. It wasn't just about the past, it was about the present and the terrifying possibility that Kate was not bound by location or time. And that brings us to today. The world has changed. Technology advances, skepticism grows, yet some shadows persist. There are still those who seek out the Bell Witch Cave, driven by morbid curiosity or a desperate need for answers. They visit the small, unassuming monument to John Bell near the original property, feeling the cold spots, hearing the faint whispers. But now the whispers are different. They're no longer just warnings, they're invitations. Recently, a series of peculiar incidents have been reported, not in Robertson County, but across the country, linked only by the victims' shared fascination with the Bell Witch legend. Isolated individuals, often those deeply engrossed in paranormal research or online discussions about Kate, have begun to experience strange phenomena. Unexplained phone calls where only static or a faint childish giggle can be heard. Digital devices spontaneously displaying distorted, smiling faces with missing eyes. And worst of all, the sudden, overwhelming sensation of being watched, followed by faint pinpricks and the distinct feeling of hair being pulled, even when utterly alone. These new victims, unlike Evelyn, are not academics. They are ordinary. People drawn into the legend by a simple Google search, a compelling documentary, or a friend's offhand remark. The common thread? Each of these individuals had, at some point, audibly voiced a specific chilling thought. A direct question posed to the legend, a challenge thrown into the digital ether, or a dismissive scoff directed at Kate herself. It seems the Bell Witch, the entity that once drove a cat to convulse and a man to his grave, has evolved. She no longer needs proximity or a family bloodline. She needs only an open mind, a moment of doubt, and a direct acknowledgement. She hears, she listens, and she chooses her next target based on who dares to address her. So as you listen to this, perhaps late at night, in the quiet solitude of your own home, be mindful of what you say. Be mindful of what you think. Because the Bell Witch is no longer just a local legend. She is a pervasive shadow woven into the very fabric of our digital world, waiting for the unwary. And if you ever find yourself alone in the dead of night and a sudden, inexplicable chill prickles your skin, remember this story. And for your own sake, do not under any circumstances utter her name aloud, for she is listening. And perhaps in the silence that follows, you might just hear her answer.